can start. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome again. If it's the third time you're seeing me today, I apologize. I am, again, Aygün Süleymanova. I am part of the platform product marketing team here at Salesforce. And I'm very excited today to kick off this session that is going to tell everyone how we at Salesforce are building applications for our employees. I'm one of the users of these applications, and I have my colleagues from both employee success and engineering tell you how they teamed up and created a lot of applications for us, and in particular, one that we're using every day to improve our performance, to provide feedback to our peers. But before that, welcome.
Thank you.
And Nora and Divya. But before that, I wanted to make sure you see this slide. Forward-looking statements, make all your purchasing decisions based on currently available functionality. And I wanted to step back first and just explain the power of the platform that is used to deliver applications for us is something that the platform is something that our customers are using, and it's something that all of these applications that you know is built on. Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, for marketing, and now we have productivity, a suite we've acquired. And behind the platform are these four things that power the platform. First is trust, and you all are, when you're building applications, you have user permissions and roles you can easily configure, and it really takes a lot of plumbing out of of the application building process. The second one is integration, and that's where we keep innovating. You have APIs, but now with IoT, you'll have streaming, and real-time events-driven IT architecture will help you bring more of the data into your applications. And at the innovation layer, you get the capabilities that you all have seen in this event today, such as Einstein and new components for building applications. And this is great, and we also have a huge community of AppExchange partners and ISVs. But when we think about what the platform can do, sales and service is something that comes to mind first. But we here like to think about the four key ways the platform helps you deliver value to your organizations. And first is, of course, with the power of the platform, you can customize. You can extend your CRM. You can tailor and integrate and extend your apps. Second is, the platform gives you the ability to strengthen your orgs with additional security capabilities such as encryption and monitoring and protection. And the third is what we're going to talk about is how you can engage every employee using the platform. It's not just about sales and service reps. It's anyone in the organization and anyone that you can provide a single view of the customer or provide productivity capabilities for. And at the end of it, once you're able to do all these three steps, you're able to transform the customer experiences. And that's where you can bring things like Heroku and build engaging applications for your customers. So this is the four ways we like to think about the platform. The Salesforce platform. And Nora is going to tell us how she, as an employee success manager at Salesforce, director, is using the platform to engage us.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, I got one.
Yeah. Yes.
Loud enough? Do I need two? You're good? Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Nora Abdoun. I am part of our talent development team, which is part of our employee success, which is what we call our HR team at Salesforce. And today I'll be talking to you about how we leverage our Salesforce platform day to day to engage employees. And then Divya, who's my partner in crime from the Gus team, will talk about a specific app that we worked on together from conception to rollout for 26,000 employees in 8 months. So that's kind of going to be the highlight of our presentation. So when we think of our world outside of work, it's app-based, right? We live in an appified world. Thank you. We have Uber, we have Yelp, Facebook, Fitbit. Show of hands, how many of you have used one of these today? Okay, there's like 2 people who didn't raise their hands. Really curious as to maybe what you have used. Truly, truly curious. So one of the reasons we love our apps is they help us be productive. Depending on what app you're using, that might have a different definition. But it kind of creates these mini experiences throughout the day that help you kind of look at some data, help you be more productive. They're personalized. It's all about me. I don't have to worry about what Divya's doing, it's what I'm doing. And it helps me with my own information make better decisions. They're also intelligent, so they could look at my data and my usage patterns and then help me say, hey, have you considered this? So again, using personalized information to help predict what my next steps should be. And last but not least, there's a little bit of addictive factor. I mean, how many of you use your phone to check an app less than 100 times a day? More than 100 times a day? Okay, some of you just don't know. Some of you are really honest. There's a statistic that says the average person checks their phone 200 times a day. And we know from self-report studies that usually people underreport by about half. So double that. And we know that like among the 18 to 24 age user, the maximized users use their apps about 900 times a day. So just a little fun facts. So what does that mean for us at work? When we, in our everyday life, have this plethora of apps that we could use, then we come into work, and there's a little bit of a gap in terms of the experience we have between our personal life and our work life. So a lot of employees, not just at Salesforce, industry-wide, are thinking, why can't my work life be like my personal life? Why do I have to go through all these different processes at work when I could just open up an app in my personal life? So that was something that just in general at Salesforce we had started looking at. And I think when it comes specifically to, I don't know how to, you know how to use an app, not a clicker though. Okay, when we look at what that means for HR, or employee success as we call it at Salesforce, it's really part of a larger changing nature of work, from like everything at work has to do with the company and what makes the company successful, to really revolving around the employee. How do you create a great employee experience, and how do you work to make the employee more engaged, more productive, happier, et cetera. So it's part of, again, this is beyond Salesforce, just the industry shift in terms of how the nature of work is evolving. There we go. So we don't have all of this figured out, but kind of the framework that we use at Salesforce, this is kind of the Cliff Notes version of it. We take our culture, which we feel is pretty unique, we pair that up with our technology, so very lucky to work at Salesforce and be able to build our own stuff, and we look at the data, and through a combination of those 3 factors, we can help drive employee engagement. So our culture we call Ohana, which is the Hawaiian word for family, and it includes not just our employees, it includes our customers, our communities, our partners, all of you. And it's one of our core competitive advantages in terms of attracting and retaining talent. So we have our Ohana, and then we look at our technology. So we have a lot of kind of traditional HR platforms that we leverage, like Workday, like ADP, Concur. They're kind of the back end piece in terms of holding the data. And we layer over that the Salesforce platform to help engage employees. Again, having one centralized entry point so that the employees don't have to go to a lot of different places. So that was the culture. This is the technology. And then when we look at the experience, every day an employee comes to work at Salesforce, they sign on to what we call the Aloha single sign-on page, and they basically have a platform of apps. And they could kind of customize it based on which ones they use most for their day-to-day work. So they could open up their Gmail, their Google Calendar, Quip for documents, Org62, which is our Salesforce One platform internally, and they could go about their day. And they could do that on desktop, or they could do it on mobile. So we're you could run your business on your phone type of company. So it also creates a seamless experience. If any of you have been in meetings and like your laptop has died and you're like, oh crap, I need to go meet with someone, who are they? You could actually look up the org chart under Salesforce One, find out who that person is, you could email them if you're running late. So again, it's all about how do you create a seamless experience from an employee perspective. So that's kind of the first thing people see when they come in. I want to highlight a couple of apps that we specifically use in employee success to help our employees have a better engaging work experience. One of them is Concierge. This is built on our Heroku platform, and it's personalized. So last night, I wasn't prepping for this. I prepared much earlier for this than last night. But last night, I logged onto my computer, and it said, "Hello, night owl." So it knows me, Nora. It knows I was logged in at night. It knows where I'm located. So again, it's a personalized experience. But basically, Concierge is our one-stop shop where employees could go if they have any questions and just don't know where to start. So, where is Trailhead DX this week? Google that, or not Google it, Concierge that. Ooh, slip of the tongue. And you find the results. There's usually an article on it. And if you don't find what you need, you could open up a ticket. It goes to our operations team, and they respond to you within 24 hours. So again, it's a great platform for employees to go if they have a question. And it still has that personalized touch. Another key app that we use for employee engagement is our V2 Mom. So V2 Mom is a combination of business planning, annual business planning, as well as annual goal setting. And this is something that's core to Salesforce. Mark Benioff actually created the first one, I think, on the back of the Amex envelope, I believe the story goes. And it stands for, what's our vision for this year? What are our values, which are consistent year to year? What are our methods? How are we going to actually achieve this? What are our obstacles? What might come up that might get in our way? And metrics. How are we going to measure success? Everyone in the company has this. So Mark and his leadership team work on it. It cascades throughout the company. And how this is helpful from an employee perspective, let's say I was meeting with Chad, had no idea who he was. I would look him up, and I could find his V2 Mom, like, okay, this is the kind of stuff he's working on. Now I could actually have a good conversation with him. So this is public within the company. You could look up Mark's V2 Mom, you could look up Parker's V2 Mom, anyone's V2 Mom. And again, you could do this on desktop or mobile. Another one of our key highlights from an app perspective in terms of employee engagement is Chatter. So this is our internal dialogue / document sharing / fund sharing platform. And again, it's available on desktop and mobile. But it has a personalized aspect in terms of, this is my bio, here's all the projects I'm working on. If I've ever shared any documents with anyone, you could find them there. It's also one of our platforms where we could give each other thanks and acknowledgement. So we do badging, Chatter thanks. And again, it's available on mobile and desktop. And one of the key things that's leveraged here is also groups. So when we were preparing for this presentation, or for Trailhead DX, there's a group, there's a community, sub-communities that each employee is welcome to drive to help them attain their goals. Oops, too quick. Trailhead, how many of you have used Trailhead? All right, so you're familiar with this. We actually also use it internally. So it's our number one go-to platform for scaling learning in the company. So when we do any kind of manager training, employee training, we always put it on Trailhead for scale. It's written in the same quirky, fun, engaging way. And we're actually starting to look at, we put some videos in there for interactivity, et cetera. So it's kind of our go-to learning system from a scale perspective. And then last but not least, near and dear to my heart, is the feedback app. So this was our major project last year that Employee Success worked with our tech and product team, primarily the Gus team, to work on. So in a lot of companies today, there's a lot of dialogue around performance management, around annual reviews. And again, the nature of work has changed. You don't just work with your boss anymore. You work with a lot of people. And so why should you only get feedback from your boss? Or why should you only get feedback once a year? So we shifted our thinking from an annualized process where you get one review at the end of the year, and then by the time you get the feedback, you can't change anything because the year's over, to an ongoing feedback approach that's multi-directional. So you could give your peers feedback, you could give your manager feedback, your manager gives you feedback, and you could see all of that. So I will actually do a demo of this. Let me see. Got the hand swipe right. All right. Let me just open it up. So our feedback app is available again on both Salesforce One desktop and mobile. So this is my S1. It's under our apps. V2MOM is the one we talked about earlier. Feedback is here. And this is linked to my calendar. So it just takes a second to load. So once it's linked to my calendar, it'll say, okay, here are the people you most recently met with. Eigen and Divya are showing up, thankfully, because we're in a meeting now. And I could give any of them feedback. So the real-time feature is kind of the developmental feature of the app. It's I give feedback to Divya, she could give feedback to me, and it's for my eyes only. So my manager can't see it, my peer can't see it, and the purpose is to have an honest dialogue about what I'm doing well or what do I need to work on without anyone else being involved. So let's say I wanted to give Divya some feedback. I could actually request feedback, so I could ask her, hey, how did I do today on today's presentation? Or I could tell her, you did this really well, or you could focus on something. And I would type it in here, and I would hit submit. So this is peer-to-peer, could go to anyone. We always give suggestions, but you could look up anyone in the company. So technically speaking, if I wanted to give Mark Benioff feedback, I could do that. But I don't have any feedback because we hadn't had a meeting in a while. So I'm not gonna do that. But real time is for peer, anyone in the company you could give feedback to. Then on a monthly basis, we've kind of taken the approach of democratizing feedback and wanted every month for managers to give feedback to their employees as well as employees giving feedback to their managers. So I could go in here, my manager, Angela McKenna, shows up, and there's a series of 5 questions that I could answer about her, kind of core management behaviors that we expect. You know, does she have one-on-ones with me? Does she give me feedback to help with my performance? Are we aligned on priorities? Is she interested in my success? So not just the what, but also the how. She gives me feedback, and then I could enter comments. And when I send this feedback off, Angela will see it. She won't know it's from me. So it's aggregated to help protect employee anonymity. Obviously, if you're the only direct report, she will know who that is. But it's done to help spark a dialogue and help ensure a safe place for employees to give feedback. Then I could also give my employees feedback every month. And it's a series of 4 questions, similar type of thing, but it lets the employee know how he or she is doing. So are they on track with their V2MOM goals? Are they acting on feedback? Are they driving impactful results? And are they a team player? And then I could also type in comments. Once that's submitted, my direct report would see that, but they will know who I am because everyone knows who their manager is. And then under the Me tab, you basically see a collection of all the feedback you've received, all the feedback that you've been given. You can see how you've scored your manager, and then you see 2 key scores for you. So since I'm a people manager, I see how my employees scored me. Luckily, I'm on an upward trend. That's what the green arrow is. We'll see how this month goes. And then I also see what feedback my manager gave me. And if I want, it's broken down by questions. So if I'm like, how come I didn't get a 4.0? I could see which questions I need to focus on. So doing a little better on acting on feedback and being a team player. And then if there were any comments, that would show up as well. So that's kind of the gist of it. But again, whether it's the feedback app or any other app that we have, it's all around how do we make this day-to-day work experience successful for the employee and meaningful for them. So with that, I'll hand it over to Divya, who will talk about the experience of building the feedback app. There we go. Success. I'm still on a PC, so Max, don't quite do it for me. All right, here you are.
Okay. Hey guys, my name is Divya Ranjit, and I work as a software engineer at Salesforce. So I work for a team called Gus, and we are the main developers of Agile Accelerator. So I don't know, some of you here might be using it already in your team, or you might have heard of it. So Agile Accelerator is a managed package available on AppExchange. It's a free product. And it's basically an Agile Scrum process management tool. You could say it's something like Rally or Jira, but it's built by Salesforce and it's built on the Force.com platform. So that is what we build every single day. So we also built the feedback app, about which I'm going to be talking today. So the main reason why we built it is because we are one of the few teams in Salesforce who actually work on the platform. And since the feedback app is a mobile app built on Salesforce One, we were the right team, to work on that. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the app itself. I know Nora just did a demo, so you guys are totally familiar with it. But the whole idea of the feedback app, like she mentioned, is to give and receive feedback. So you have upward feedback to your manager and downward feedback. We also had something called as an anonymous feedback, where you could just give a feedback anonymously to someone. And so you also have manager-employee scores, like she just showed. You could get a 4 on 4, something like that. And the most important thing was we had charts and metrics, so you could get a good visualization of your feedback and your score itself. And the main end goal of the feedback app itself is to replace the year-end performance summaries with monthly feedback. And this was such a big win for us, because you guys have no idea because how much we hate the year-end performance summaries. Having to actually write about ourselves at the end of the year, going back and looking at all the cool things we did. It's really annoying, to be frank. So this is way better because you get monthly feedback, you can improve yourself, and also you get a score as well. You just get an idea about how well you're doing. So that's the whole idea of the app itself. Now, to talk a little bit about the journey of the app. So these were the key learnings or the overview of the app itself when we built it. So the very first thing I have to talk about is learning Lightning, because this app is a mobile app built on Salesforce One. So our team had to learn Lightning from scratch. So learning Lightning was a bit challenging because we had to have the entire team learn Lightning, and there was a bit of a learning curve. But I can say you have amazing trailheads in documentation now, so learning Lightning is a breeze right now. So that was the first important thing while building the app. And the second one was we had mock-ups prepared by a designer, which was really helpful in our case because we had an end goal in mind. We knew how the UI is supposed to look like, so we were able to jump right in and start developing stuff there. So that was useful. And the third thing I want to talk about is using Salesforce Lightning design system. So let's say we actually learned Lightning and we started developing the components. So the key thing to note here is we used Salesforce Lightning design system, which is SLDS for short, for all our CSS, icons, logos, and basically the user interface. We use that instead of using third-party CSS or third-party libraries. This was very useful mainly because we started off as a mobile app, but later on we extended it to desktop as well. So we did not have to write like separate CSS, or we didn't have to like write separate code for that, because SLDS took care of it. So it was compatible across all devices, and it made the UI very uniform. So it looked like same, both in the mobile app as well as in the desktop. So using SLDS like made life a bit simpler and easier for us. The next thing is reusing components. So again, as I mentioned, we did not have a separate code base for mobile and desktop. We reuse the same components, Lightning components. The whole idea of the Lightning component itself is reusability. So it makes sense to like think about building your components, thinking about it a little bit before building them, because you would be like reusing them in multiple places. So we did reuse our components. Like when Nora was showing it, we reused the components for manager and employee feedback, so the component is the same, whereas just the text was different. So we were like able to reuse a lot of components in that case. And the last thing was like in our journey itself, we had a lot of changes in the requirements. Right from the name of the app, a lot of things kept changing. So that was something like, that was something we just went through like in our journey. So it's just, it just happens. So that's part of the journey. Okay, so this is a little bit about the timeline itself of building the app. So as I mentioned, we had to learn Lightning. That was the first important thing. The second thing was like, we had the mockups done, so we had those two done. So the next thing was obviously building the schema. So I know like you guys are using Salesforce, so creating objects in Salesforce is really simple compared to like creating tables in a database, because it's just on a click of a button you could just create an object. So creating the schema was fairly simple. We had like a team meeting. We were able to decide on the objects, the main objects, based on like the requirement. And then once we had the objects created, we were able to like create the relationships like lookups and master details, stuff like that. So we had the schema done completely. So once we had the schema and we were like familiar with Lightning and everything was ready, we actually started building the Lightning components. So if you see, like we took the main functionality, like you need to give a feedback to your manager, and then you have something called as a real-time feedback. So we took the most important concepts or most important requirements, and then we converted them into Lightning components. So again, we reuse the components like I already mentioned. And so the front end was all Lightning. And for the back end, we had like all our controller side code in Apex. So we were like developing them side by side. So since my entire team was like dedicated to this and working on this, we were developing them side by side. And then we also had to develop a lot of background scripts. Like I mentioned, the feedback app is a managed package, which we developed. So we needed something like an install script, a post-install script, stuff like that, nightly scripts, a lot of things like that. So we had to develop some scripts as well. So once we had all of these ready, like significant amount of work done or code was like written, we were able to like go ahead and create the managed package. So the important thing to note here is we use the branch org feature in Salesforce, meaning multiple people working on different dev orgs can share the same namespace. So different people on my team, we all worked on our individual dev orgs, but we were working for the same app. Like we were all working for the same feedback app, but we worked on separate dev orgs. And because of the branch org feature, we were able to share the same namespace. That didn't cause any conflict for us. So we all worked on individual components on our separate orgs, like I mentioned. And finally, when everything was done, we were able to check that code in. When I mean check the code in, I mean we used like a subversioning system like Perforce or Git. We use Perforce, and we got everybody's code in, and finally we were able to create a package. So once the package was actually ready, we were able to upload the package, and we were able to like install the package in several sandboxes. And we did like multiple rounds of testing, and then we had to like fix bugs, do testing again. We had like several rounds of UATs, several testing, and finally once everything was ready, we were able to like do the company-wide deployment. So like I mentioned, like this feedback app is not something we work on every day. This was like a short project given to us. So we had the initial prototype done in 1 month, and we had like the MVP like completed in 3 months, and then we had like the entire project done in about 6 months, and then the company-wide deployment was about in 8 months. So that was like the entire timeline of the app itself. And one more thing I want to talk about here is like choosing a right namespace. It's something like we encountered. So like I mentioned, the name of the app changed a lot. Like it changed like twice or thrice because it just changed a lot.
Sorry.
But yeah, but changing the namespace later on in your code is very difficult because you would have to actually go and change the namespace in every single place, like every single part of your code. It's going to get really complex. So it's good to like think of a generic namespace before you like actually just on the whim just give a random namespace, because it would get difficult to change it later on. In our case, like we chose like a kind of generic namespace, so we didn't get affected that badly. So that's one other thing you can note because it gets difficult later on. So this was like the main time frame itself of how we developed the app in over 6 to 8 months. And so finally, about the challenges. So I'm just going to talk about very few of the challenges we faced, because we did have a lot of challenges because we built it in a very short time. So the first one I'm going to talk about here is the anonymous feedback. So this was something very challenging and very new, something which we had never done before. So the whole idea is to give an anonymous feedback to someone. So just think about this. To implement like true anonymity in Salesforce, it's very difficult because let's say I am providing anonymous feedback to someone. So you would just say, just don't store the person who created that feedback. Just don't store that information in the database. But it's not that simple because Salesforce has some kind of system fields like created by, last modified by, stuff like that. It's automatically going to save the person who created the feedback. So it's not truly anonymous. A person who's a sysadmin, he could just go query and find out who actually gave the feedback. So we had to come up with a new way of implementing this. So what we actually did was we created like a secret anonymous table, which nobody had an idea about. It had like a really off name as well, so nobody could guess it or relate it back to feedback. So instead of writing it to the database, we would write it to this anonymous table, and then we had a script which ran every few minutes. It would pick the data from this secret table and write it to the database. So the main end goal of this was the created by would be the name of the script and not the person who actually gave the feedback. So this is like a very roundabout way of doing it, but it was like the only way to implement like true anonymity. And even a sysadmin who's going to go and query to find out who gave the feedback would only have the name of the script and not the actual person who gave the feedback. So yeah, so this works pretty good now. It works fine, but just the way of implementing this was very challenging because it was something totally new for us. So that was one of the challenges. The second one is about the charts and the metrics. So I know like Nora showed, you were able to see a lot of charts over there, like based on your scores. So the challenge here was like we went through some technical difficulties, mainly because we were using high charts for, as a charting library for the embedded charts. But the issue was Lightning locker service, like Salesforce locker service, was not like agreeing with high charts because it was causing a lot of security issues, like it was breaking the pages. So midway, we had to stop that and we had to use chart.js, which is another JavaScript library. So this was something like a bit challenging because we had to figure out the right library to use. Whereas now, if you guys are going to use like a library for charts, Salesforce recommends you to use chart.js, whereas when we did it, it was last year and there was no standardized platform to use. So again, in things like these, it's good to do some research to go with the right library because sometimes, other things, it's just going to like affect your pages. And the last thing is about the manager and employee scores. So like Nora was showing, like, you wonder why you didn't get like a 4 on 4. So the challenge here was just the calculation of the scores. The way they were calculated was a very complex calculation. And it kind of kept changing often. So it kind of, it was sort of affecting our historic data, just the calculation, because it used to change after a few months. So that was a bit of a challenge for us in basically the scores. That was the main challenge. And the other thing here was, so what we were doing was we were doing this calculation, this complex calculation on the fly, and we were just displaying it on the page. But later on, during our journey, we realized that we had to also show these scores in other places, like Shatter or Visualforce pages or reports or stuff like that. So it didn't make sense to keep on calculating it every single time. It made more sense to store it in an object instead. So things like these, so we had to create an object later on and store them instead of recalculating just to improve performance. So things like these, it just makes sense to have some foresight and think about it before, before implementing it. It just saves a lot of time and performance as well. So that is about it for the feedback app itself. And our product owner, our product manager, when we did the feedback app, Chad is right here. So he's here to answer questions as well, and you could ask me as well. So thank
Yes,
you.
just ask him the questions.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Hey, sure. Yeah, you want them?
Yes, go ahead.
So, what are the bigger challenges that you face on the charts? Like the requirements itself are like very, very difficult as possible.
Yeah.
We have standard products that are there. It looks like you have done a lot better than those products that are there in the market. Looking at that, I realized what are the bigger challenges on the charts?
Yeah, the main thing was with the locker service. It was breaking
Sorry,
our pages. That was one of the main things.
Sorry,
And-
could you please repeat that? Because I don't think
Yeah,
anyone...
so his question was like the main challenges we faced with embedding the charts. Yeah, so one of the main things was with locker service. Yeah, we really didn't get what was the issue going on, and then it wasn't really agreeing with the library. So the thing why we use high charts was because we have used it a lot before in our other pages as well. So we just went with the flow and used high charts, which was like pretty good for us, but Lightning was not agreeing with it. So Chart.js, the main issues we faced were, so mostly with embedding it itself in Lightning, there was a little bit of issues in that. It was just going off the page, stuff like that. Mostly with mobile, there were a lot of issues with the CSS and actually getting the embedding done. But these were like the main issues. And also like with the calculation of the scores, because that kept changing, even our charts changed based on the input scores as well.
Let me ask you a follow-up on that. Where is your master data stored? What is your source system for the employee record that currently Salesforce is using?
What's the master what?
Like, are you having any third-party? Are you using Workday or PeopleSoft, or what is your source?
Oh, no. So we are like we are actually storing it in our, we have objects for that, for storing that.
Okay, is that your master repository?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Okay, and this includes all the employee data as well?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Within
So that's the thing. So this is on Org62. This app itself is on Org62. That's where that's a company-wide org where all of Salesforce is, they can use it. So yeah, all the employee data and also the scores and information and the feedback itself, it's stored on Org62. It's not on some third-party
Okay,
app.
I did see some integration with Workday. Are you doing any integration?
I think
with
that was
Workday?
The only thing that is integrated with Workday as far as the feedback app is it just pulls the hierarchy information.
Okay.
From Workday. It's also, the feedback app is linked to your calendar, so it give you suggestions. But the only thing it pulls from Workday is it's a one-way
So
pull
basically,
based on
to know who's
hierarchy.
your manager, so just that information.
Correct. That's what I was thinking,
Yes.
because the reporting hierarchy cannot be stored, and it is a employee master data, and I was
Yep.
looking at all. Can you name all the integrations that you used for this, like within, other
The
than
main thing was with Google Calendar, so we were storing the token we were storing it in our database one time, just one time generating the token and storing it. But that was like the main thing, and like for the charts, that's it, only those two. Everything else was on Lightning, they were like native Lightning components, so that's how we built everything.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Hi, great presentation.
you.
I'm a manager and I have around 25, 26 developers and testers. I think it's great you can rate on a consistent basis, but could you do it more like a full page and then you do the rating for multiple employees instead of going to the app and selecting one employee, having to do that, and then another employee having to do that? Is it one-to-many, or you just have to do one-to-one?
It's one.
Currently, it's one-to-one. It is
Okay.
something that a lot of our employees, especially project teams, are starting to request. So we're researching how we might be able to do that. But currently, it's only one-to-one.
Okay. Great. And we have one more minute if you have any questions. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you,
you.
Nora and Divya.
Thank you.
Thanks to everyone for coming, and hope you took away some tips from this presentation. Thank you.